convene this April 10th meeting of the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. Can we have the roll call, please?
Aaron Angel. Here. Scott Conlon.
Here.
Thomas Davis.
Here.
Paige Lewis.
Here.
Sam Libby.
Here.
Nicholas Novello.
Here.
Dan Olson.
Here.
And Council Liaison Tim Waters.
Here.
Great. Okay, before we go to approval of the agenda, why don't you, David, do you want to just...
Sure. Since you're all sitting across from a new face, I thought I want to keep you in suspense all evening. It's me. This is Stephanie Cooper. She is our new senior project manager. So as we start looking at some of these 8 and 5 projects we talked about, not only we were looking for additional staff, we were down a staff member too. So Stephanie's coming here with a great background in what she's doing at Children's Hospital as an architect, but doing projects and getting things knocked out quickly. And she's looking forward to taking that and helping us build some parks.
Awesome. Welcome. Thank you.
Welcome.
She's taking all the projects over?
Yeah. If I don't slow her down, 100%. 3 weeks to offload everything and I'm out. And I'll update you on other positions as we get to staff updates.
Great.
Okay, we'll go to approval of the agenda. Does anyone have any proposed changes to the agenda? If not, we could have a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve as is.
I'll second that.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
I'm sorry, who seconded it?
Dan.
Thank you.
No, we will move on to the previous month's minutes. Does anyone have amendments to the minutes?
I have a question. Did we discuss feeding back info about those? I didn't see it in the minutes,
Yeah, that was one of my
but I felt like I needed to be doing something, and I
You can do it?
no, I couldn't find a link.
I
or-
always send it to Sam.
Ah.
So, yeah. No, David,
Anyway, I was thinking there was something that should have been in the minutes about
Yeah.
that.
there were attempts, I think our CIP discussions are evolving and we're
Okay.
probably not going to get much in the way of direction from the board for this year's 2024-2028 CIP based on the fact that council leadership has directed us to just focus on the 8 and 5.
Okay, I don't need the details. I'm
But-
just talking about the minutes here.
But
that-
David and I will have some more updates
Okay.
for you here later in the meeting.
All right, great.
It was added as a printed spreadsheet.
I saw that.
We didn't get the digital version.
I saw that, but
Yeah.
that was in this week's packet, not in last week's minute. I kept looking for a mention.
Yeah, there's
That we
2
were should've-
pieces. One was
right.
I was going to provide some way of giving
Yeah.
the most current update on the budget and where we're at, and talk about how it's going to evolve, and Steve was going to provide kind of a task where you kind of.
Yeah, we were gonna
clarify-
vote on 2 or 3 of our
Steve
favorites.
will update you
Yeah,
when we go to this.
okay, all right.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if that needs to be put in the
Well,
minutes
that's what
or
I
not.
actually had made a note under, I have a few things, but under new business where we said that 2023 capital improvement projects, we had follow-up where you were gonna send sort of a link and we were gonna go through and talk about the projects that were, not the ones that were in the approved, but the ones that,
Future,
and
yes, future.
like provide feedback, so,
And that will still happen, it just won't impact the 2024-28 CIP.
okay.
Nor
I don't know,
do we
so
think
I
we'll
think
do
we
it
just
anyway.
need to capture it in the
Yep.
minutes, and it might be, I sent you guys that follow-up note, so it might just be that language. If not, I'm happy to help. And then, in the first sentence under that, there's a mention of focus on current projects that have not been done in a while. And I think what it was is that projects that have been funded but not completed.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then I had a question. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. There in the bullets right below that it says recreation will begin engaging the public mid-year on the interest of pursuing an ice facility. I didn't remember that. It's in the pickleball thing.
That was pending Jeff's discussion of.
Well, it
what
was
else
kind
is
of a
going
separate thing, so I'm just not sure if that's
What
True.
that might be, Paige, is that with the Quail Campus project that is part of the 8 and 5
right.
goals, there is need, at least a staff desired need to engage the public with not putting the ice facility in and putting pickleball in its place. And Jeff was assigned that by Joni as far as a task that he would carry forward. I think he's just sort of
So then it probably is just to gauge public support for putting
Pickleball.
pickleball instead of the previously
Right.
planned
I think you should say
ice.
interest of not pursuing this facility.
Right.
No, that's
Sure.
Yeah,
that's the message.
That's probably it,
Yeah.
yeah. And then, sorry, there's on a couple more. Down below in item 7, where I had asked for clarification about the recreation budget. And I think Ben had said, there was a note in the previous packet about the recreation budget being underfunded, and we had talked about it. I didn't think this quite captured that, which is that like recreation is raising a lot of money, but it is still being budgeted at a smaller amount that was based on what was budgeted pre-COVID, and that needed to be, so I feel like that needs to be captured a little bit more clearly, because I do think that's an important point.
You're right, and Ben spoke for
Right.
extensively, or at least a while, yeah.
Yeah, because the clause at the end of the second sentence is the bulk of it, right? The 25% was cut.
Yeah, I mean, but I think there's a piece too about where they're actually like raising more money, and you saw it in this packet too, they're raising lots of money.
Right.
So is there a phrase we should be sticking in for Veronica? I mean,
Is there a way to conditionally approve minutes based on the absences of staff needed to?
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean,
can't
I'm
speak
fine
for
with
them.
that,
Yeah,
I think we
I
can
can't speak
say, we'll prove it and hope that you will follow up to
Okay, I got
clarify
it.
with
Let's
Jeff.
okay,
That was all for me, so. Anybody else? Okay.
Motion for approval of the minutes with the amendments that were just discussed, the notes that staff took.
Second that.
And assuming that staff will follow up.
Staff will follow up.
Jeff,
with
yeah.
Jeff and Ben, we had Jeff and Ben conversation.
Any second?
Yeah.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay, I don't see any public invited to be heard. Everybody came last
And they all
month.
came in the last one, yes.
They wanted to be here with
That's the
Nicholas.
agenda.
I have a question about that. Is this an okay time to ask about?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I wanted to follow up with them, but I wasn't sure if that was okay. I mean, they gave their contact, they gave enough information for us to contact them. I wasn't sure if that was okay, if I followed up with them. To say, thank you for coming, I appreciated hearing your voice, because we do just present sometimes even just our backs to them.
I mean, I think
I
as an
think so.
individual citizen, a member of the board, yeah. I mean,
I would agree.
I wasn't sure if that was.
In my experience, if it's not like 3 or more board members together, it's okay to send that personally. 'Cause that comes-
just don't copy all of us on
Yes.
yeah.
Oh, it does.
Send it individually.
Yeah.
Open records things.
And yeah, them giving their name and address is an open records thing, it's part of the minutes that are public. So that's what you need in order to get in touch with them.
I mean, they gave us everything
I
that we
don't
needed,
know.
like to hit in the letters. It's like, oh, okay. Pretty easy, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what we do as an individual. Okay, we'll go to old business. Is there an update on the,
So I'm gonna try to have this conversation with a lot of unknown facts, a lot of information out there. So we've been meeting with Harold and the leadership team within the city, trying to prepare to go back to council. And one of the things that Harold is really hoping to do is go back to council with some input from these boards on what they really want to see carried forward. When they had the last council meeting about this topic, when they presented from the consultants, we had members of the community that showed up to talk about the Performing Arts Center and that facility. And I think council really took that to heart, that people were organized, willing to do something. And I think what Harold is wanting to see is there a group of people out there in the community willing to carry these other projects forward. And how they may want to do that. Right now, we're not in any sort of ballot language or voting piece, so this group has really talked about ideas they have. Scott has talked to Jeff a little bit about some of his suggestions, ideas, on how we could keep the community engaged and organized. One of the things is this was presented to council, there weren't a whole lot of things that were much above the 50% mark. And as you start talking to consultants, that gets them pretty nervous about, can that really make it forward without having some really strong grassroots support to help carry that forward. So I really think that's what Harold's looking for right now before we go back to council, I think on the 24th, is that the boards try to present a message that they have an interest in certain aspects of the tax initiative, and then what they may be willing to do as a board, and then once the boards can't really be involved because of some of our legal requirements as a quasi-government entity, what they can do as a grassroots group. So with that said, Scott, you want to talk about some of the things you've been thinking about?
Yeah, so for those who don't know, although I think I've reached out to everybody individually, or me as practices, but after the city council meeting a few weeks ago, when the survey data was presented, was really just interested in we can't miss another opportunity going after the rec center was the first thing that came in my head. But I was really kind of won over by how well Union Res did as well. So the consultant presented the data. There's two sides of the data. I thought maybe tonight that they were presenting the data. But so on the scientific side, the only thing that passed what they considered their threshold of 60% was Eugene Reservoir. Passing as a ballot measure, but the rec center upgrades was at 57%, and then new rec center was at 55%. So not terribly far off, but there's some jumbled bits there in terms of the language that was in there. I think just from being on the board and being interested in recreation, open space, I was like, oh, let's see if we can build an issues committee. I knew the two people who were on the issues committee in 2019 and kind of reached out to them. And then from there was like, well, let's just reach out to a number of stakeholders and see if anybody is interested. And so that group has grown to about 50 people so far. There hasn't been an official meeting of any sort because there are 7 things on here. And I think the response I get the most often is, that needs to get pared down because everybody kind of wants to do something. And quite frankly, since I represent a lot of the cycling community, they're like, there's nothing on there for cyclists. I'm like, no, wait. 8 and 5, there's a lot of cycling things on it. We need to have a different story about that. And so I think folks are looking for a bit of focus that's in there, but really the new rec center and Union Res are the two biggest things that people are interested in. So it's one rec project, one parks and open space sort of project that people are most interested in that's there. Whether it gets bundled with rec renovation, what you do with Centennial as a question, because Centennial was if you guys saw that, it was a mess of a question. People thought we were just gonna tear down the building, or it was I think it's all invalid data on the Centennial side. So, but there is an interested group that wants some focus to then put some pressure and show that there's interest in to get people out and going. I know that one of the subgroups is a PTO of one of the schools that's near the rec center, which is a great starting point, getting people who are excited in the neighborhood to help push for a rec center if it's going to be down in southwest part of Longmont. So there's a lot of things to overcome, but if you have parents who are in a PTO down there, they're clearly not the group that usually votes, right? So we saw a lot of demographics on that, and there's some issues there. So
another quick piece that I think Harold observed in this is with the performing arts piece, that group was able to bring out people who don't typically show up at the podium. I mean, there's a lot of faces that typically show up for certain pieces. And I think one of the things that Harold and other council members, what I think impressed them was that the depth of the bench, that they were bringing out, more than just the typical people that are willing to take a Tuesday night and show up. So I think that's a piece that, as you're kind of looking at those atypical groups, that's probably an important piece too.
right, yeah. I think people want to know what can I do, but what is going to go to that? What are we doing right now? And I'm like, I think there's a role that our board needs to play to help direct what their next step is, because they're like, there's 7 things, and if everybody's coming up yelling at something different, that doesn't really help. I don't think that helps council say, we're going to pare this list down, or this is what the people in the community really want. So I would like to help them with maybe those two as the two that we kind of, push forward and think about moving forward, but I think that's up to the board and for us to have that discussion. But I think it's an interesting group. We've had a great conversation with two people about how to build a whole budget and what the price per vote would be and how many votes we need to get. I've learned a ton of
Price
things.
per vote is not a good term.
I'm just saying. Well, that's so, but it's really you're looking at you need to get 3,000 more votes basically to get your to beat the margin of error for the year, and you're raising about $20,000. So I'll let you then figure out the numbers. So, but if you're in that ballpark and you're doing that, there's certain subsets within the market that you're going to go for. If it's going after a particular neighborhood versus Union Res, which is a little bit more community wide, or there are two different wards that are being played off of each other. So it's I don't know. I'm really excited about it, and I'm really hopeful for this group, and would encourage anybody who would like to volunteer to jump into that group to do it as well. But it is kind of a weird sort of space between the board member and a private citizen.
But I do think right now, that's why I gave you the ability to kind of talk about this evening. I think, again, as an advisory board to council, at this point, we don't have anything really out there on the ballot. We aren't kind of prohibited from talking about what the interest of this group is. I think that's what one of the benefits is the cross-representation of our community that uses our parks, our open space, and our rec centers, and trying to figure out the message that we can carry back to council is an important piece of this time, to a point where we can't talk about it as a board or a staff, but this is probably the right time to do that, and have a plan set up when that stop line starts, and there's a way for their groups to stay engaged without violating any procedures.
And we can still provide information.
Right, at that point, staff, that's what we really are. At that point, we're an information source at that point on what things are going forward. Dr. Waters, do you have any other thoughts as far as a council member being up there and having sat through one piece and what may help?
I have several thoughts. First of all, 60% is the threshold, not 50%. I think did you say 50? It's 60%. And Scott's right. Yeah. We only had one proposal that approximated or met that threshold. In 2019, we decided to put the rec center on the ballot. We had a 58% positive, approval rate. And we were cautioned then, that's before you get organized opposition. Mm-hmm. And we obviously had organized opposition, and we got killed. So, tangential to all this, well, not tangential. Part of what that Harold was impressed with is the fact that there is one group, or there is a group organized around one initiative. Clearly, they're well organized and they're ready to campaign. Right? They're raising money. They formed an issues committee. They've created the right accounts they need. Right, in terms of both an education initiative. They've got a capital campaign going. And if any group wants to see any of those proposals passed, they better be as well organized. Right. So to talk about that, you got to move. You don't have to move real quickly because we don't have a package yet, right?
Right.
So there's a lot of questions you can't answer. But if you're not going to be, if you don't have a group that's well organized, I don't think there's any point in putting it on the ballot, no matter how much you want to see it. Here's what was the tangential part of this. I sat in this room, however many years ago, 4 years ago, surrounded by the hockey community. That we have to have a nice facility. I wasn't on council very long before we saw the feasibility study. Tuesday night after Tuesday night was I thought, what have I gotten myself into? I wasn't used to being in a room with people yelling at me and pounding on the table to put this facility on, and these were swimmers mostly, to put it on the ballot and just give us a chance to get it, to make the case to the voters. I heard more than one time stories about kids who died in traffic accidents, coming home from Loveland after a swimming or hockey practice. I mean, there were all these appeals. When it got to the ballot, there was organized opposition, and even last Tuesday night, or the last council meeting, I heard repeated again that the city council then did not listen to the public. We put a question on the ballot that we wanted, not what anybody else wanted, which I believe is simply not true. what we put on the ballot is a result of a feasibility study that had tons of input from our recreation community. We didn't do the feasibility study. I don't recall a single voice that rebutted that charge that this was an elitist, too expensive, too exorbitant, unresponsive proposal, right? So it's interesting, we responded to it, to the, I would say, demand, certainly the expectation that we put a question on the ballot for which there was no organized campaign, nor was there even a willingness to respond to a criticism that we simply didn't listen to the public, when indeed what ended up on the ballot is a result of having listened to the public. Those who organized want us to listen to them, not to you. So in moving forward with this, you got to think about a couple of aspects. One, what you're going to advocate for. And if you're not willing to engage with other members of the public to kind of hold people accountable, us and others, then you're going to, it'll be a failed effort again, I fear, right? Because we heard it already. Right? Don't make the same mistake. Don't listen. I don't know what it was. Listen to the public. I think more specific, listen to me or listen to a group other than the people in this room when we get into this. So you gotta have to be well organized. I'm not certain how we're going to pare the variety of projects down to what's actionable. We'll have to see. The Magellan strategies. We'll see what the new questions are. They were authorized to put together another package of questions or set of questions, specifically driven by Centennial Park, right? And the confusion around the questions and the responses, and the polling. I think contributed to the confusion as opposed to the clarity of what's being proposed. And I'm not certain when we're going to see the result of the response. There's nothing tomorrow night, and there's nothing in the queue. I looked in the queue today for council meetings, which is unusual. I'm curious why there's nothing in the queue to anticipate what's coming up over the next 6 weeks in terms of council meetings. So if there was, I could tell you, yep, it's going to come back to us on the next date, but I can't find that. So at this point, we're all kind of waiting to see what the staff comes back with and what Magellan Strategies comes back with in terms of polling questions. But regardless of what that is, you want to see something succeed, get organized, number one. Number two, you got to be willing to engage, not just advocating for, but rebutting what is misinformation that's going to come.
So I'm curious as to how that rebuttal would look like. How a citizen could rebut. Rebut? Is that the word? I don't know. Because in my experience, you're public invited to be heard. You get heard, even if there's a question from council that goes to the public person. They can't say anything. You get one shot. So you have to, basically, you would have to go again to another, how does rebuttal work?
Well, it's a couple of ways.
Okay.
Depending on where you are, as you sign up. If somebody comes up after you, you're not going to have a chance to rebut something that might not ring true or might not be at least your experience. In a regular meeting, there's always a second council or public invited to be heard. So that means you have to be willing to sit to the meeting. It's always interesting to me to sit at the dais and listen to the variety of people with all the concerns they have, from transgender issues to state legislative policy or whatever. Nothing that's on our agenda, but it becomes an open forum, and then people get up and walk out. Right? Nobody's really, not I shouldn't say nobody, very few people interested in staying there and actually learning something about the business of the city. That's just my edit. You can do it at the end of the meeting. You can write a letter to the editor. You can come to the next meeting. But there is no reason to not, when you hear something that to not be true, there's nothing wrong with coming to the podium, even if it's the next week, and say, I heard this. You don't have to call anybody out by name. That's just not my recollection of what happened or how we're moving forward with this proposal. May 30th, there's going to be an open forum. I would make certain you put that on your calendar. That's an opportunity to have a conversation. Right? We don't get to respond even when there's misinformation, as frustrating as it is, to say, whoa, whoa, whoa. Now, at the end of the meeting, we get a chance to comment, and I did, when, you know, not calling anybody out by name, but saying, I remember quite differently what happened in 2019. On May 30th, it would be a chance to say, before anybody sits down, let's go back and review, because what I heard you say doesn't strike me as anywhere close to what the facts are. So let's talk about, you know, what your experience was versus mine or somebody else's. But there are opportunities to respond.
Yeah, the best way to rebut something is to control the narrative, though, too. Is to get out in front of things and to, you know, have an issues-based website, get out in the public and push a message can, you know, help. Because a single person has a lot of voice right now, versus like a large, you know, I would say, you know, probably majority of the city that has constantly said they wanted like a new rec center, who are not coming up to the dais to talk, right? So you just need to get the volume, and then you can knock down some of those things.
So in terms of just like paring back the number of things, because I do think the complexity of the questions and the number of things presented and the way they were presented was very confusing. I mean, I've done lots of surveys and I found it confusing knowing the issues. But I feel like this board, I mean, in this configuration and previous configurations, we have consistently advocated for a new rec center as a board. And I don't, you know, I think considering other things, I mean, you know, like the addition of Union Reservoir might be something that could be considered, but I think we, at least in the past, have consistently said we think it's, you know, a very high priority for Longmont to add a rec center. And I feel like, you know, we have had resolutions in the past that we've shared that could probably be dug up somewhere. And I don't know, you know, if we are still of that same mind, I think we could consider, you know, passing a resolution and going to council and suggest, you know, sharing that.
Paige, I think that's necessary, just not sufficient.
Right. No, I agree. I'm just trying to think that what we could do as a board to try to start narrowing the field, recognizing that there's other pieces.
When the last rec center was being considered by council, I remember there being a lot. Now, obviously, the digital world has changed in the last 20 years, but letters to the editor were very frequent, very robust, getting the message across to the public. And there still is a pretty good cross-section of the population that does read the Times Hall every day and gets a lot of their news from that publication. So that might be something that just the board considers. Dr. Well, I was just wondering, is there, what I heard you just sort of respond to Paige, you're saying what is needed is a board support as well as individual support.
This board passed a resolution supporting that proposal in 2019. I would be really disappointed if that didn't happen again. I'm just saying, when we get there. I would be equally disappointed if nobody from this board was willing to show up on a Tuesday night and say, whether you're speaking for the board or speaking for yourself, that I think this is the right thing to do for these reasons. I encourage you to move forward and have somebody, whether it's you or somebody else, come behind that and say, and we are organized. Here's what you can count on from us. And invite the community to join you. You can, at that point, once we have a package ready to go, you can't campaign as a board or board members, but there's no constraint on your campaigning on behalf of a proposal as a resident. So
You and I presented it, but weren't you there with me in 2019? So we did, but I felt like that was all we did. There was that whole group, low-code swimming or whatever it was, that we were pretty ineffectual in retrospect. I mean, there was not a lot of oomph. We all got together and thought, hey, this is great, we should do this. But then there were several letters to the editor on the other side, to your room, I remember the same thing, that were really effective. just before the election. And I think that really swung the balance.
That's narrative things.
Yeah, it's that was the swimming group basically said they ended up having infighting themselves.
Right, hockey and swimming didn't really work together at all.
But even within swimming, they had issues.
And the naming thing was awful.
Yeah, and then they didn't get to fundraising
Right.
until
Bad
October.
idea.
Just put that on one of
It was
One
just
of the long
bad
list of
overall.
mistakes.
Yes, I mean,
one got branded.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. There was it's basically like it was a pretty straightforward what not to do.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, and so it was interesting. I mean, it was a former board member of PRAB was part of that group too, and she's just like yeah, we did everything wrong. So I'll gladly help help you do it.
I can
Better
picture
way.
exactly who
Yeah.
that person
So
is.
There were a couple actually.
yeah, so I think a lot of things were learned, but yeah,
Right.
I think there's you got to get out of your own bubble is a big piece of it. You got to talk to everyone in the community. So
I think we all thought, wow, what a great idea. This is so obvious. It's just going to pass. And when you're talking to like-minded folks, it seems obvious, but yeah.
So, I mean, I'm hearing a need maybe for us to make a near-term statement, and ideally, I think backed up by, community support. But that's why I'm wondering if we want to, we could show up individually, decide on a future city council meeting. We could make a statement as board and just say we still feel like it's a very high priority for the community to have a new recreation center. That statement could include something about the swimming pool, because I think the issue is my understanding is that the new recreation center would sort of incorporate the replacement for Centennial. I mean, I don't know if that's true, but I think
one
it's
project,
not a rec center or
one project will definitely influence the other,
right.
certainly.
So I think a full service,
and-
recreation facility.
And nothing that we've seen so far, is there anything that salvages Centennial Pool? And I don't know, we talked about, Scott and I met not too long ago, and talked about where the number goes, right, in terms of the top line cost, if indeed we were to replace, you're gonna have to eliminate Centennial Pool and redo it. It's
Right.
that far,
Right.
it's in that savvy shape.
But I
It's
don't
just
think anyone's
aged.
saying we should eliminate Centennial and not replace it with some equivalent swimming capacity, right? I mean, but I think that was people's perception.
yeah, it's tough because there is a lot of reaction of moving it from one ward to another,
Right.
Or moving it out of one neighborhood to another, right? And there's a bunch of that clearly was in the reaction.
And we're getting that incoming email now.
Yeah.
We should know.
Yeah, so I think it'd be great to get an answer about Centennial Pool as part of it, but I think no matter what, I think it changes maybe the scope of the rec center, but it doesn't change whether or not there's a second rec center, period, right?
Yeah,
I think the fundamentals this early on, we don't have the full feasibility of the rec center.
I haven't heard a detailed layout of what the new rec center would entail. To my knowledge, we haven't done that.
No,
So I
that
think
goes to the feasibility study.
Right, that they're working on now. Yeah.
At the end of the day, somebody needs to be thinking real hard about how do you engage the challenge that will come. No matter where we put, one of the mistakes we made for 2018, we never identified where it was going to go. So we got hammered for that. Right? And then the issue of equity became centerpiece for the opposition. And nobody framed a case or made the case for how that proposal would have increased, would have been a movement toward equity, not away from it. It would be an opportunity to include kids who don't ever have a chance to spend time in that kind of an amenity or on ice or what. And I just think somebody needs to be really thoughtful. There was no response to that was effective in 2018. It was framed as an elitist proposal. It was opposed as an elitist proposal, and it failed because that's the way it got. That's the way it got opposed, in my opinion.
We just said that there's no detailed information, so where did the number come from that was proposed in that survey, 64 million?
Well, there are cost estimates, but in terms of the
Based on
specific
pool and
90,000
right?
square feet.
it's,
Yeah.
Just square feet per. It's a basic estimate.
Kind of what we
Yeah,
have,
exactly.
make another
Yeah.
one like it.
I think it is really important to have the specificity of what people are going to get, because otherwise they read the first line of the ballot and that's it.
Right,
And
yeah, I
it's
think,
specific things to hang their interest on.
yeah, I think it's one of those things, like you say that there is a senior center extension there, and then there is a pickleball place to play, and there is also a pool. You bring all of those groups together, literally under one roof.
Well, because the previous pool in ice was essentially a rec center.
What?
I mean, there was gonna be
Yeah.
a recreation facility
Yeah,
and they
they
never
just
called it
never
that.
called it that.
Never
Right.
called
We
it.
had called it a rec center with pool and ice, like, it might have been a whole different thing.
Two things also came out with a lot of people who got back to me was the survey also, what I would be hopeful if this is actually true, is that they universally, like the people who talked to me about the sales tax part, universally were like, well, I didn't even know what was going on, so I voted lower than I would have. Because I don't even know why the sales tax part plus the mill levy. So I think the sales tax part like, is stupid or whatever. I don't think it was well explained that one part was the operational cost and one part is the capital cost or how this is going to be done. So I think there's again a communication of what they're asking for in that piece that may have trended it lower than what people usually would have because they don't even know what that meant. Right? So
That's another, some of the other incoming email is just that. Well, how can you build these things and not be able to pay for the operation? Well, let me explain.
yeah, right.
What's in front of you? And people in the correspondence saying, I didn't understand that. You know, I didn't have the benefit of an explanation or whatever. So there was a lot of confusion about that as well.
Mm-hmm. And I would I'll throw in one last other thing is that people love that the fire stations are being built, right? I mean, what was that bond? 2021?
2000 and,
22.
that was the 2000. No, that was 2019.
It's the 19, yeah.
It was on the
Yeah.
same balance, right?
But I think putting the date things get built or like it's gonna like this is gonna happen and it's not like hey we're gonna do this and maybe in 20 years when your kids are all grown and they don't need the rec center anymore, then we're gonna build this building, right? I think they want to know that this is actually gonna happen at a certain time. I don't know what the legal ramifications of the buying side of that is, but that was people were like, oh yeah, that would be a sure benefit if we could get because that's what the school district does and says, you know, in 7 years we're building 2 high schools and 4 middle schools with your money, and then sure enough, they start getting built that summer. So.
School district has 144 million.
Well, the scale is all different.
So, any thoughts on actions you all would like to take now, or any next
It
steps?
feels to me premature for like a memorandum of some kind, in that there's enough up in the air still about the new questions and study that need to be answered. I'm very supportive of us making a statement or a what did you call it? Resolution, that's right, about that, but it seems a month too early or more than 2 months too early to me. Just to be more specific in what we actually are supporting, rather than to the point like generally supporting rec something.
I don't know that we're gonna be specifying in the ballot language what's gonna be within the recreation center. It's gonna just be a recreation center with recreational components. I don't get the sense from what we've talked about.
Yeah,
that we're gonna
I agree with that. I'm just
specify
saying
what's
there's,
in
of the 7 options or 3 things that went out there,
Certainly,
that feels like open right now.
I think maybe this is where I'm kind of wondering too, that idea of how council's gonna decide how to package this thing. I think what I'm kind of doing is what they're hearing the public telling me say is we're going to help you carry this forward. It's probably going to help them decide.
Two observations. One is before the survey was constructed, we went through a conversation about there are 11
Right.
possibilities. I remember saying in that conversation, you know, there are some of these, like the $5 million for the update or, you know, the refurbishing of the current rec center.
Right.
That's got to be above the line, right? If we're going to do this, to overlook or to be unresponsive to the needs of existing, you know, to defer maintenance that doesn't need to be deferred. If we can pay for it, that's got to be above the line. Frankly, I looked at Montgomery Park. I looked at Union. I said, if I'm going to draw a line, I'd put Union in Montgomery Park and maybe something else below the line, just to simplify the survey. Everything got into the survey. Right? Now, what would really be helpful is if this group had a rank order, highest to lowest, what are your highest to lowest priorities in that list of recreation, parks, and rec amenities? If you can do that, that'd be really helpful. Because there's going to get, the line's going to be drawn. And I would hope you'd want your perspective at least represented in that conversation when that happens. Because they're not all going to get in. It is too expensive and it's too it's $250 million.
What do you think is the time frame for that?
Well, I wish I saw something
Right.
in the queue in May or for the rest of this month. The fact that there's nothing there is a shock to me. It's the first time in my tenure on council I've looked specifically for preparation for this meeting and a meeting earlier today, and there's nothing there.
Working backwards, I think you have to have the bond language approved by August.
Yeah, it's roughly.
But you're gonna decide, you're gonna pare it back before then.
Early June is my understanding. We got like the next 6 weeks to do the second phase of the poll and to get down to, you know, the hard decisions about what's in and what's out. But I would tell you, it would be, if you don't bring a highest to lowest priority, that is going to happen, and it'll happen with your input or without it. I would think you'd want your input into that. I would value that.
Yeah.
The thing that's getting me is that the Performing Arts Center has only one subject, and they have a very big community, and so we're suffering from having too many topics,
Right.
and it's really hard to do that. Same sort of thing, because you don't get as many people really excited about 7 different things equally, or that's there. And in the meantime, if there is, wait for June or July to press city council, you have months of Performing Arts Center people coming to city council every Tuesday, or every other Tuesday to talk about Performing Arts Center. And so that gets in the paper weeks and weeks over. And it's a very conservative voting base. And so they're going to pick, if they pick something to fund, it's probably going to be picking like one thing, right? Yet you have to get them way in advance and have them.
Well, that's why I was thinking like recreation center, like if we could emphasize,
I believe so too.
And I guess that's my point to that ranking with this group here. If they've got their 1 and 2 and the others are below their line, it still gives you that.
Absolutely. That would be what your highest priorities are, would be really helpful, because there's going to be a time where that decision is going to get made. Just 2 other observations. I've sat in a number of those meetings with the performing arts folks, not recently, but in trying to help with the kind of organization and move this stuff along. And even within their ranks, there's a fair amount of diversity of thinking about what the specs, the features should be in a performing arts center. And they have come to terms with, stop that. If we're going to let that get in the way of organizing and standing in solidarity behind a proposal, this won't pass. So they've decided that's not going to become a flashpoint for them, right? Number one. Number two, you've been seeing this in council, you've also been reading about it in the paper, because they're pretty well organized in terms of who's writing the next piece and who's coming to council Tuesday night and what's the message. They are drilling over and over and over again the theme of the relationship between children and education in the Performing Arts Center. And if you've been reading this stuff, you see that theme over and over again. Not a bad idea, right, in terms of the inclusion of children in all kinds of opportunities, recreational and education, because of what we could do with parks and rec facilities in Longmont. The kids simply don't enjoy some experiences that they could and should in terms of what we do with the preservation of nature as well as the built environment. So, there's some really powerful messages, and at least they've concluded, and I think they're on the right ones in terms of what they're bringing. At the end of the day, however, campaigns are going to play out between Labor Day and the first Tuesday in November, right? So everything else is preliminary. When you're in campaign mode, you want to be able to hit it hard coming right off of Labor Day. But anything before Labor Day, people just don't pay a whole lot of attention. to a campaign.
But you build all your message.
Building
up
an
to
education,
that.
building an awareness, and that's what they're doing right now.
So you want us to have a list? Could you? You want us to rank? Where's the list? What's our list? What's our?
Ignore the screen for a second.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that was a hard part of it too, was all the reporting of both the survey and the results was focused just on rec center, library, and performing arts, not on any of the other parks projects. But that was the, you said, hold well, but they weren't covering the media at all. It was hard to get information out
They
there.
were
Oh, yeah, yeah,
poll
yeah.
results.
Right.
Doing the results, but
Right, yeah.
everything was focused on the first three things.
That's a good picture of you.
Thank you.
No, it was this morning.
It's not appropriate. It's we're old friends. It's like that. Come on, you have enough friends who are real estate agents who are.
No joke. I'm gonna go hit the homes for one.
Could that ranking be a topic for the retreat?
Or
It's not something.
God, no.
You can wear it as well, because this is all kind of.
That's the list of questions in this
I mean,
Oh, there you go.
we could just do a.
This is my crazy little notes.
Oh,
that from the
Google.
minutes
We
of
could
the-
do a little
the
Google
council?
poll.
No, this is my notes.
See where
of
people
the
are.
projects and then
Yeah, okay, here we
from
go.
talking to people I built out.
We're going old school here.
Potential budget, strategy ideas.
Thank you. I'd love to like.
Very preliminary packet stuff.
What are we calling it? Performing arts?
Center for Arts Entertainment.
Yeah, performing arts is you're right.
You know, like something.
Museum.
I had to go through the survey days to remember what all the items were. This is not a place where they're all on the website somewhere.
Right.
And the survey's still open, thankfully, so it helps. Don't know if that's supposed to be open, but.
I want to comment on the fact that I got 2 texts from them. Like, how did that happen? I'll answer it twice.
I agree with you though, Scott. I feel like the simpler it is, like simpler whatever the what is, the better. It's
Yeah.
like, it's just too many complexities fragments people.
I mean, somebody came up, I forgot, in one email, somebody came up with a, let's get physical Longmont sort of thing. I was like, headbands and wristbands and to all dork out. Like, this would be amazing, because you would remember it for sure.
What's Montgomery Farm CP?
Montgomery Farms Community Park at the southwest corner of 66 and High Line Road.
Okay. Okay.
Ignore the survey that had the
CP's and.
Okay. Thank you. Good.
Didn't help there.
Because they,
53rd was not
the,
I was like,
yeah, like I really hate acronyms.
Okay.
They're very exclusionary, but I understand you're writing us that as fast as you could, so that I don't think
It's right
now.
here.
I just.
It's the city, get paid by the letter.
Yeah.
So now, what?
Well, I mean, if we're talking it as a board, you know, I would think new rec center upgrades to the old rec center, doing something with Centennial Pool, like those are all kind of connected to each other. And then, you know, Union Reservoir is a big outdoor recreation facility and was popular, and so if there's some way we could create a narrative that links those two, otherwise I would focus in on the rec center pieces.
The way it was presented was new projects, which was the first full set, right? Library, rec center, performing arts, and museum.
Yep.
So are we,
And-
okay, this line thing, is that the line that we're supposed to put things up above?
No, it's not.
No.
It's just a line, not a.
That was,
Not
yeah,
Tim's
new
line.
recreation and
Okay.
cultural, and then new park, and then renovation. For the 3 groups.
Oops.
I would have understood Reno there, so, they just got so much money.
Summer's coming, gotta pay for the trips. Cultural centers, something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, the first four all feel like recreation. I mean, they're not necessarily part of our purview, like not necessarily part of our thing, but they all are recreation and education. Just because you're learning doesn't mean you're not recreating. Yeah, so they're all having fun and learning.
The library was just the branch library that was associated with the rec center.
Whether it's associated with the rec center, it would be a branch, as opposed to a brand new library or a library district. There are some members of the library board that still would like to pull the library out and take a shot at creating a library district. I don't think that would be a smart play right now. But I also, for whatever it's worth, I think at the end of the day, I think the museum expansion will come off. Just because there's a Kim Manager, who just left as the director, had retained a consultant to help with capital campaigns, and I think she's convinced they're going to raise enough money that you could go to, not unlike the Performing Arts Group is doing now, to say it would be a public-private partnership, don't sell a bond until, in fact, I think what she's suggesting, they can raise enough money to do the library expansion, would look for a dedicated sales tax increase in a subsequent ballot to fund the operational costs. But we'll see. I think that's how that's going to go.
So one way of consensus building and idea building and getting a vote in is just having each person, walk up and rank 1 through whatever set 9, their own, and then we just see where that falls. And that is the low-tech Google form.
I have 4 different colors of marker.
Yeah, that's right. We don't even have to, it doesn't have to be,
I mean, we could just go down and say, what's your 1 and 2?
Right.
Your top 3, yeah.
1 and 2, that's it, right? Top 2.
Can somebody mark on the board if we do that though?
The way that we're
No, you think better
But she has legs, too.
aesthetically. Why don't we just get up and stand? And just do it. Because people think
I'm happy to do it.
Okay, well, I mean,
I think you just start there.
no, because seriously, I'd rather go up and not have I want to, I want to go up and do marker, I'm just going to be honest though, and you guys are all going to watch me, and so that's the reason why you don't do this, is you're supposed to have 4 people up with 4 markers writing down their thing, because this is how I build consensus 3 times a semester and getting a bigger group than this.
I'm totally into
Figure
it.
this out.
Just let's be clear. What do we want to mark? Do we mark 3 lines for 3 things we like, or names, or what do we want to do when we get up there?
You could rank them 1 through 10, or everybody gets 5 votes, and you can put your 5 tallies. Well, I was going to say you can put your 5 tallies on
Anything you want.
anything you want. You can put all 5 on one.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Do you want 5 or 3 as well?
Well, I would prefer to do top 3, but I don't think it's fine.
Okay.
We want to try it.
But it's the points that everybody stands up and that everybody goes in.
I think
rushes in.
5 is fine. Pretty quick.
All right.
It'll be fast.
All right. Yeah.
You can't
Library expansion to this town anymore.
We knocked it over.
5 votes.
I tell you, I think we can.
It's only the real elections we're going to say.
He's doing a great job. It's wonderful.
1 man, 5 votes. 3 to 5 votes, depending on what you feel.
The
Stewart Foundation is really.
they've been awesome job.
But this wouldn't all come from the steward, they're just convinced that she's top rated and knows what they need.
Oh, blue.
Without
Oh, sorry, I didn't.
You know, I think I'm gonna go with orange just because nobody else has done orange yet.
Or you don't, like, you don't even need to have, like, the point is that you can just go up and semi-anonymous. You don't have to look and be like, oh my gosh, he's in the back and he only voted for.
I appreciate that.
So we have 3
Yeah.
votes, right?
I like
Yeah.
5.
Five strikes.
Yeah.
I like your Vans pants.
Yeah.
So that's why, I just wanted people to see that, so I guess they're fashion.
Yeah,
But no, I also think aesthetically, like getting up and voting and also not just saying.
Oh, because you're term limited.
I'm not turning.
You're not.
There we go, that was good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There it is.
It's not Labor Day yet, so I don't really pay attention, just like you said, I'm not really thinking about it.
We
Not that
got an
surprising.
email this morning from Dan Wolf, who supported the.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it is.
It was fun to see Dan's name. He
Yeah,
did a
good.
great job.
We spent talking about Dry Creek
And I don't
Park.
generally respond, we get emails that come to everybody.
Right.
I just
It's
don't
like,
think they're
yeah, it's
right
like,
for
I feel it's
a
my
ballot
prerogative to respond to anybody.
initiative.
But it was Dan, so I just said,
And if you
hey,
think of
thanks
initiatives
for your
for
work
like
on this.
facilities.
And thanks
Or it's
for
like,
your
why are those
comments.
parks there and not every other park that
And,
they're
Right, yeah.
he wrote
I
in
think
response,
it's-
well,
So,
so tell me, how's this new chapter of life going?
3, 4, 5,
He said, well, I'm still trying to figure it out. I did apply for the open season water board. I thought,
Oh, did he really? Oh, that's so funny. I haven't seen him in a couple months. He got back surgery
That's 11.
Oh, he did?
Christmas. And
Yeah, otherwise it's just 2 more.
ones.
Like, oh, Paige is voting, dude, she's got 2
And
more.
the medicine that they injected dissolved the kidney stones would have
No,
dissolved the
'cause-
stitches
oh,
in
yeah,
the back,
that's
so they
right.
couldn't take them. So we had to just
got it
just
out
tough it out.
after back surgery? Oh, man, what a devil.
I was texting like, because I saw his son, and I was just like, I know you're lying. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just having a conversation.
We can hear
Yeah. Just let me know if something else needs to happen.
you. I think we're good.
But he was lying on the floor.
Well, it looks like rec center and union.
Not that surprising.
But
Let's be clear, it's clear the new park topics too.
I'm sorry, let's be clear, what?
I think it's clear on the new park section, there's a lot of interest from this board in the union part, not the 2 new parks.
I mean, like I said, I support those parks, I just don't think this is the right vehicle for that.
I also think union is a thing that's easier to build consensus around for the public. It's something that people have experienced, they've already been there. No one's been to Dry Creek or whatever and farm.
Well, like, how many farms is it?
Well, Dry Creek does.
it's
Well,
also,
not in the form of will though, like it's hard to imagine.
it's also got the cross-section of water security. Like, so people that are concerned about our water quality and our water security, it's got the nature and it's got recreation. And it's got like super inclusivity is that. So that it's gonna win. It, could.
It's unique too, for the city.
Yeah.
So
So
this
given
was the-
Way nicer
this,
than.
What, remind me, what was the Union Reservoir, what was all in it?
I have the text here.
Expansion and, or was this,
That ring road.
Yeah, the
but
extension.
making the reservoir bigger was
Yeah.
part of it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bigger and
deeper in.
I can say the text in the survey.
Okay,
They can
18
put a
million
road around
dollars.
it or whatever.
Union enhancements would include an improved ADA compliant swim beach, boathouse, boat docks and storage, campgrounds, restrooms, lockers and showers, additional picnic areas, and an enhanced trail system.
so it does not say,
The expansion,
Let's
that's
see.
one of the things that, we've talked about ways of moving that forward, there's additional dollars out there we can look at, but the improvements we can make, we think we can make in a way that even expanded, we would make those improvements a way that they can expand with it. Crush fine trails, picnic areas that are already back far enough. The boathouse would be something to be potentially movable, but yeah, we don't have the ability to say that the reservoir company is going to expand the reservoir.
so that's not part of the
It's
proposal.
of the actual, I don't.
So far, okay.
Because it can't be, you're saying.
I'm not sure it can't be, but it's gonna take a lot more
well,
work
that
to make.
expanding
third
the
party.
reservoir is different than sort of upgrading
Right.
the facility.
That's what I was asking though, I'm not
Expanding the reservoir is-
I agree.
convinced
I
that's
think-
both thing.
I guess I thought it was more
confused.
expansion than new facilities more than upgrades.
It's new facilities.
So you look at this, this is the eastern side of the reservoir here, this is the approved master plan, so it's a lot of camping. That would be a conversation we would be having
He's
with.
in the 18 million.
This is the master plan,
Yes.
they're basing that dollar figure off
So I'm just going to try to be clear too. Expansion of existing amenities versus expansion of the capacity of the reservoir, I think is what we're trying to.
Yes, two separate projects.
Right.
But one that
Does
affects the other.
does it include the
Yeah.
trail all the way around?
Yes.
That's a fun project that should start here, it's part of 8
Well, yeah.
So there
That's gonna happen independently of what happens in November.
is going to be camping. Camping's coming back.
Yes. Well, that was one of the things in the master plan. I think we continue this, and I'll give the background on that. One of the things that, we were running a campground and we were not staffed for a campground, which made it unsafe for the users and all that. So as long as we staff appropriately, and that's that whole funding piece for how do you build and maintain it. There's ways you can do that internally. Recreation is great. We also have a great history of using vendors to do that kind of stuff. You look at other park systems, they use outside vendors to manage their campgrounds. So as long as we do it in a way that's professional and safe, I think it's a great opportunity.
So really, it makes the day use areas pretty much on the eastern side of the site. The other, this is the current Union Reservoir area right now, where everyone comes and recreates. This would be mostly for boat storage, a boathouse, things like that. So it would be more for clubs and organized users, I should say, rather than typical day users.
Is there a way to link to this in the survey questions? It's really, could we do that?
That's a good question to ask.
I find that the survey questions
It's all online.
very boring, and this is very exciting.
It's all there online, yeah.
Right? But it's pretty hard to find. I can't find the questions anymore other than going through the entire survey. So I think it's all in the
Again, that was
packaging.
one of the problems with the previous one, is that there were never any pictures. What might the new pool and ice facility look like?
Yeah.
What might it contain? There's just,
Yeah,
I
and you
won't
want
go down
things
that
to
rabbit hole.
be, you want things to be very accessible for people. When in doubt, I just vote, some people are, when in doubt, I vote yes, when in doubt, I vote no. But if you give them really easy access to information, they can make a
I agree.
vote.
It's a good suggestion.
So we do have other agenda items, but this one's important, but I do want to wrap it up if we can. I do personally feel like it would be valuable for us to have some kind of preliminary resolution that just says, we as a board continue to be very supportive, of a new recreation facility. We're also very supportive of, the proposals for Union Reservoir. We know that there is some, community organizing in support of these, but we just wanted to let council know that this is very important to us as a board and to the constituents we represent.
It's got this aligned with what right? Right. So you won't have to switch your narrative at all.
No, I don't have to change over to Montgomery Farms story.
I mean, do people feel I can make that a motion?
Yeah, that's fine.
Do we
Very
need
accurate.
to wordsmith what we're voting on?
I mean, it looks like we're more, if we're doing an order of importance, the board is supporting most Union Reservoir. As in addition, a New York, the new rec center. I can't.
I disagree. I think
Yeah,
that
I
the
don't
votes
think
are
so
too
either.
close to differentiate that. The
Oh.
margin of error is too
You
close.
think 15 to 11?
It's not scientific. No, you don't have more than 24 in each one of your groups.
Right.
So.
We should have ranked choice voting where you only have those two if we want to vote one or the other is best. So it's fine with me to say both. These two items are,
I would move that we as a board craft a resolution expressing our continued support for a new recreation facility in Longmont, and in addition, our strong support for the proposed expansion of Union Reservoir, and that those be advanced by the city council or be given favorable consideration by council for a ballot initiative.
That was perfect.
did you get all that, Veronica?
Veronica's not here.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at you and
So she
thinking.
did not get it, but Aurora did.
Yeah,
get it.
Aurora
No,
did great. Thank you, Aurora.
I did
Sorry.
not, I apologize, I was talking to Steve about the picture, so.
Oh.
It's on the camera, right? We have a recording.
Well, this will be in your minutes. I can send her a photo, she can insert
Well,
the minutes.
that page is.
Well,
She just said words.
Yes, those words were
But I
perfect.
won't be able to say them again.
No,
I know, that's why we like.
Oh, he's got it. All right.
Yeah, thank you, those were
Awesome.
perfect.
I'll
Okay.
second the motion.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, and so then we need to deliver it to city council at some upcoming meeting.
Tomorrow.
Here's would be my only concern with what you just did. First of all, what you did is great, but there are going to be some things like $5 million to refurbish the existing rec center. That's going to be part of. I can't imagine going to the public without that. Honestly, as part of this deal.
Why not?
Because we have deferred and deferred and deferred. We're a decade behind on, even with the 8 and 5, and to not do what we can now to make certain we maintain an existing asset, I think would be irresponsible. I'm not certain I would vote, frankly, for a bond question that builds a facility and ignores one that needs attention now.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. That makes sense to our conservative base as well.
Yeah, I think, and I don't think that has to be an either or. My only point would be, you might add something in addition to whatever else the council might consider. These would be our top priorities, right? So it's not like, whoa, are you saying we shouldn't include $5 million to update the?
I think it was open. I don't think our language was exclusionary. It's like we voted for these two things, we may vote for 3 and 4 other things later.
All right. Just want to make certain that we're not at odds with this group and
Right,
in decision making.
Yeah, I mean, because, one of the things I voted for was the rec center upgrades. I do think it kind of goes with the new rec center, but.
And staffing.
The rec center, yeah, that's a whole other.
Yeah, I mean, it is, but that's not in the public eye. When they're voting, it's not, they're like, well, why would we build a new rec center if we haven't had Kanemoto open for the last 3, why are we building a new pool when we can't even have Kanemoto open, right? So
So there's city council
That's what my neighbors
tomorrow,
are
and then, is it every week or every 2 weeks?
Every Tuesday. Well,
But it's
the
different
LHA
sessions,
the third, one Tuesday, but it varies. One Tuesday of the month, we'll have a housing authority board meeting.
right?
So, and I don't have the right machine with when you get to the portal.
Is there anyone else that would be interested in going to city council and delivering our resolution?
Sure.
We could just
If anyone
pick a
is,
day.
yeah.
Yeah,
It could be any meeting you're saying.
I mean, I think,
Yeah.
so we just need to pick one, maybe we can.
How does the resolution get written? Are you doing that? Or does the staff do that for you?
Well, in the past, we've written it and
Yeah,
then
you've
staff has delivered it, but I think that we should deliver it.
Yeah, I do too.
does it look like a giant check? Like,
Hear ye, hear ye.
Yeah, usually we just read it.
okay.
Right now.
So, a week from tomorrow night is a housing authority board meeting.
Okay,
So
so
then
the
the next would be the 25th, if you're not doing it.
25th,
Yeah, just trying to find your schedule. I don't know,
okay.
You're saying it's hard to navigate the
So maybe we could,
It's like a long time running job in the city, even the communications team doesn't like it.
so maybe we could plan tentatively on delivering it on the 25th. That would give us a chance to get the language and send it around and make sure everyone feels still comfortable with it.
Yeah, you look at this and.
I think we have to use what you said, right? We can't like.
We do, but we have to make sure it's because we didn't write it down on the board.
Well, and you can read that, but you get to couch based on previous experience. When I did this, you get to say, I am Dan Olson, I'm here representing, personally, I think this, and the board says this. I mean,
Or
you
I can
have,
read the board resolution.
right,
if
whatever.
others
There is
want to.
some freedom here. You're speaking in front of the
Yeah.
board, as a citizen. It's not like you just have to drone on.
That's why I think it would be good to have multiple members.
Right,
So
last
I
time,
can go
Paige
and
and I
represent
went.
the board, and then
Right.
everybody else can have.
And you can speak sign up as public invited to be heard, somebody else can, so.
And then what about coming in another time and saying, I would like to remind city council that.
Yes,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
sure.
Because,
Yeah, well, that's
the
part of the
24th is
whole
not
bigger,
Well, that's-
yeah.
a good day.
The argument that you're making, that the other folks are making, they're already doing that.
Okay, so our next, actually, Well, we might wanna think about this next agenda item too, in conjunction with that, because it's my understanding that the first public meeting for the master plan feasibility is April 26th, which is the next day. Is that, so this is the next agenda item, but Jeff and Ben are not here, so.
So I've been sending them questions, but I'll get that information as soon as I can. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Well, so when I mean, in the packet, it says that the first public meeting, which will be hybrid for the master plan feasibility study for the new recreation facility. So this is where they'll be talking about some of those details that get incorporated into the feasibility study. The first public meeting for input is April 26th. And I definitely feel like we should be part of that if we're interested. And so will you, I mean, there was a little bit in the packet, but will you send out any more info about that? I mean, that's a tricky piece, right? So that's where all the details, I think, for what would be in the rec center, if it's put on the ballot, will come from the feasibility study.
Maybe we should wait a week after then, or do both.
Competitions.
Well, the next meeting would be the second of the city council.
Well, what would be the advantage of waiting? Like, you can just re-say it better.
You can make the same additional comments the second time too.
Yeah, that's what I mean, it's like, why not do it as soon as possible, and then say it again betterer and betterer and betterer.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I can't go on the 24th, so, sorry.
You can say better in a second.
Yeah.
Okay, so tentatively, city council on the 25th, and then everyone should just know that April 26th is the first public meeting for the rec center recreation feasibilities. And David will work with Jeff and Ben to get us some more info. Anything else, Tim? Yeah.
Just make the note on your calendars, May 30th right now at least is a public forum. And that is an opportunity to engage in a conversation and possibility of correcting misinformation or answering questions or whatever. I wouldn't miss that.
Is that in the evening session?
Yes. Yeah.
David, formerly in transportation meetings, Bicycle Longmont would come to like open houses, and we would a lot of times collect the names of the people who came, just separate of people, staff people taking names, and it was considered it was okay because you were just invited to be there to talk about bicycle advocacy or whatever. In the same sort of space, I don't know where the line is of like an issues committee collecting the names of people who come to visit to say, I'd like to be part of this advocacy.
So you have a separate table with a separate list, you're not.
Right, we're not saying we're the city, we're saying if you had another table saying, would you like to join an advocacy group that's
You have your
for
information there and you have the ability to have, I think that's fine, I can double check with that, but I think if there's a distinction between the two, you got your audience there and they want to walk your table and say, here's information we're providing, would you like to be part of this? I think that should be fine, and especially if there's a transportation, but I'll double check, but I think it sounds reasonable.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. So I'm just assuming we don't have any more information on the master plan feasibilities.
No, I do not.
Okay. So the next item from old business is discussing a potential retreat. It looks like the best day for that is the 13th, May 13th, which I originally had a conflict, but I don't anymore. So if that still works for others, we can go with that Saturday, May 13th. I think we would look at like a 8 to noon or 8:30 to 12:30, something like that. And then
Monday before that, whether that be the 8th, that's our scheduled meeting day. Will we still do that? Okay, just making sure we thought that through.
yeah.
Do you have ideas for?
Yeah, so we talked through a few ideas that were submitted. We, in a conversation, Nick, David, Jeff, and I went through, and what we were proposing is to do kind of the first half thinking about master planning processes, so understanding how the city uses master planning, the master plans that apply to both recreation, parks and open space, thinking about this current master planning process that's happening, just so we can all, have more discussion and understand how all those things fit together and how the board can influence those things. And then what we talked about was actually adjourning as a board, and then using the second half for those who wanted to stay and talk about the sort of issue committee concept in support of the potential recreation items on the ownership. And we also, Erin had suggested that we have a conversation or consider a conversation about diversity, equity, inclusion and sort of parks and open space management. And I actually thought that would be a good full board topic for a meeting. And so that's what I suggested that we actually have that like an agenda item for the board. And we could talk to Parker, right? Or they're also, they had some thoughts about sort of the city parks.
Yeah, we have a equity group within the city now that's trying to take on more of a leadership role in that area too, so we'd be happy to bring them into the conversation.
So we could maybe do both. But so for the retreat, it would be kind of, master planning workshop, and the idea is to be able to just have less formal conversations and really, learn about these processes and the plans that result from them and how they work, and then spend the second half, if people are for it, sort of adjourning as the board and meeting and talk about the issue group. And we talked about potentially meeting at the library.
Yes, Jeff
Because
said he was checking that.
would allow us to make that switch. Because it's a public facility open to everyone, not like a specific city facility.
We talked a bit about talking about CIP topics as well, but I guess that's less relevant now for next year. The timing might not be as useful now, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Whatever you want, I can prepare for that. I just didn't get to that list of near
We
future, middle, and far, what you had asked for last meeting. I just didn't get to it this month.
We can keep that on the agenda too.
I thought it'd be good to have a second topic beyond master planning. Like, we're done in an hour and we want to make use of the time. It'd be good to not adjourn right away. I feel like something else would be good. I thought I had an idea, but.
Yeah. I was thinking master planning might take longer than that, but that's it.
It could.
Yeah, feel free to throw out if you have other ideas. I mean, I think we'll have about 4 hours.
Right.
I would be interested in talking about how the public gets information about the things we talk about. Like, we've all talked at length about how hard it is to find things sometimes, and that we're all searching through our packets for keywords and having Steve show us things in the map, and it'd be nice to have a brainstorm about how we could be more consistent in information sharing to the public outside of just the recording of the meeting. I think it's pretty opaque to people, the names and the terms, and being new to this board, things like 60% design plans and CIP and all the stuff that we talk about in our conversion about is pretty, is jargon to this board and the experience we have here. And I think that taking a look together at the website, how people consume information passively, and how they get to know what's happening with Parks and Rec at the city, actually has a huge impact on feasibility of ballot measures and interest in these things. If the information is hard to get to and not interesting, then I'm not interested in it. And I'd be interested in talking about how we can improve that. Knowing there are limitations on the IT side, the city's website, et cetera, at least being clear about what the priorities are for the different departments and what we're working on here.
I think that's also part of justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion.
Sure, yeah.
Do you guys, who would be able to talk with us about that? Or should we?
I would like a.
Yeah, our comms team would be the best thing, so I can get
It feels like a brainstorm for an hour that all of that topics.
That's the issues from the summit.
Right.
Yeah, if you could see if there's someone that might,
If that makes
would be
sense.
good
Yeah.
for that kind of discussion.
I feel like that's,
And I think it would be helpful to have like, maybe like if you could articulate specific examples.
Yeah, if we were talking about, I'll definitely prepare some comments on that too.
Ahead so that they
Yep.
can prepare.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I have always a question. This is a question that's always in my head from anytime we've got city master plans to the 1,000, it feels like 1,000 CIPs I've gone through, so I'm not is there like somewhere in between with the city? Right, like you started talking about like a lake that's north of 66, and that could be like 30 years from now. It's just like, where is here are the places that we have, and how, because every year as a CIP, it feels like it's Groundhog Day every time it happens, versus like, in 10 years, we want this, we'd love to have this.
That's one of the things that I think that list we're trying to do is that as things drop off, where does that next idea come from? And I think
Right.
one of the things that
Yeah, there's two things. There's one, we do have the Parks, Trails, and Recreation Master Plan that did set out a 10-year plan for where we were supposed to be, and then the plan was to update the master plan. That happened, that was approved right before the flood, and so that skewed everything that happened over that 10-year period. We are trying to figure out when the best time to go back to the public and update our park, trail, and recreation master plan. Recreation's going now, doing their internal recreation stuff, and I think it'll happen in the next 3, 4, 5 years. It's not a priority as far as leadership at this point in time.
But that's why I think it's important for us to talk about this, because that's hanging out there.
right.
Like recreation's going on its own, what's happening with parks, parks, trails, and open space.
But that doesn't mean that we can't educate the board. Like, it would be logical that the board be a little bit more educated than the general public on this sort of stuff.
No, I think that'd be great.
So wherever you can get to you within.
So Scott, you want to finish kind of where you want to go with that then? That idea of how would you work that? 'Cause I'm the same way. I think it feels, as we sit down with this group and start talking about next year's CIP, disingenuous that you have a whole lot of input, but if you start looking at that past that 5-year piece, how can we really start making a difference, that long-term planning?
Yeah, I mean, at any given year, you have a general idea of what the budget's going to be, right? So, and be like, okay, well, given whatever parameters we have outside of like a flood or, pandemic that may, okay, so we have both of those in 10-year period. I'm sorry, that screws up budgets. But having some sort of thing that's balanced of saying, well, the whole department is heading in this direction, and we know that this is what is kind of guiding all of these pieces. Because I think what as Paige was saying is that there are like 12 master plans, and that's great, but they don't talk to each other terribly well, and they all then fight against each other, and then just like, well,
And they're all different time frames.
yeah, and I understand it's set by city council every year, but at least if there was some idea of where is the city going? Like, are we headed towards high density urban environment? Or are we going to be a suburban podunk town of Boulder, right? Like, it'd be some idea of like vision, not just for recreation and parks and open space and trails, but for the city, and then that dictates like we're all trying to work towards this with our plans in a longer term fashion, right? Envision Longmont's part of it, but it's there's a lot of it that's, quite frankly, it's a little bit on the cutesy side, and you can kind of say, well, it checks the box, but it's not really something I really want to budget to.
But yeah, that's this piece I think maybe, because that truly is the overarching, guiding document, and then those others, you have to kind of figure out where they fit in under that.
Do you feel like we could, because this kind of gets back to what you were saying, could we talk about, the master planning, but then do you think we would have time to tear down and say, okay, how does what's in the master plan, inform sort of what gets prioritized annually, as well as kind of what gets prioritized in kind of 5 and 10 year increments? Like, how does it actually touch down? And that connects with the CIP.
Yeah, because sometimes, especially for new people, you must see the CIP be like, this has been introduced in 2012, and it's been unfunded for all of these years. How does it even get in the CIP and never get started, right? And like that's kind of like that wonky jargon that happens that people are like, how does that even happen? That something's in here for 10 years and never, it's been identified as an interest, but that's as far as it goes.
I can name one project that's been there for 28 years.
Okay. Yeah.
I won't do it right now.
On farm?
No, well, they're pretty close. There's a few in transportation that are quite some time. So.
Well, why don't we, David, do you feel like we could start putting together kind of a draft agenda, and you could maybe talk with your folks about? Because I don't have a good sense of how much time we need for each of these things. I'd like to leave kind of like an hour at the end for the kind of separate issue committee discussion.
That's why I make sure on your timeline for that 8 to noon, and I'll word that for the separate committee. Is that what you're saying?
Don't
Or?
we?
Yeah, no, I think an hour's fine.
So we have 3 hours, but you know, building in breaks.
Time for snacks.
I hear retreat, I hear good snacks, and.
So the cake was pretty good.
No, I don't. I don't do that.
Month-old
I
cake,
don't have the
2-month-old
keg
cake at that point in
either.
time. I'll pass.
Yeah, the keg or the cake.
The best snacks were the ones she provided, that's what you had.
Just finish
Well,
something
and we
else.
should talk about too, can we do lunch?
Yes, we
I
can
don't
do
know,
that.
so,
If you want to do, yes. If you want to
so
do the,
let's.
go to 1.
Follow up.
Yeah.
Follow up.
And listening to the board, and I think would be really helpful is for me to get with Braden or Brett to try to put together a map, JS map of all the future projects to help with them understanding where they are and maybe throw some dollar amounts at them.
Yeah.
I think, I think that
I
might
can
be
help
helpful.
too if you want.
I was thinking of you. Yeah.
I honestly think, and then you're gonna be like, oh, this is the touchy-feely recreation practitioner, but that's why I'm on board. We kind of need to get to know each other as well. I don't know really anything about all of you except for one person plays tennis and one person bikes, and that's what I know about you all.
Strong message.
And
from
one
you guys.
person works for Nature
Smart, but
Conservancy.
okay.
So I feel like if we're gonna communicate better, we may need to spend
Yep.
some time relationship building as well.
That's great.
Can we do that after the public meeting? Do we have to do that as part of the main agenda, or can we do
Well, I would think that all communication would be better if we started with that, because,
We can do some stuff
sure.
at the beginning.
Yeah.
yeah.
We don't have to share all our deep dark secrets.
No, I mean, yeah, we would be like, you know,
Yeah, no, I think
never
that's a
have I
great idea.
ever, or whatever. You know.
Okay,
That's great.
does May 13th still work for everyone?
Yes.
You're on speed to you.
Okay, good, done.
I play with adults too.
Okay.
But yes, that's a.
So, new business, we have capital improvement projects, board priorities, but we didn't ever really receive anything, so I don't think we can really have that conversation.
But just to reinforce, our CIP for the 24 to 28 period is gonna look very much like the 23 to 27 period, focusing on those 8 and 5 projects, funding those with some PRO 186, which is the park rehab program, coming back in to fill in some of the gaps areas that we've deferred maintenance on for a while. So that's really what it's gonna look like. There'll be one new project, which is the trail that David mentioned that we did get a grant for from the state for connection of Union Reservoir to Adamberry, the property we just bought last year in St. Vrain State Park. That money's in 26 or 27, so it's going to be a project that's future funded. But that's the only new project you'll see. Anything else to add?
No, I'm just trying to go back to, I think, with the assignment, the reason for that list though was really kind of allowing some prioritization from this group as those things were down below that line. So we know the things we're working on right now, so it really is, that was kind of the goal, was setting up a,
That
is
was
that
the
right?
things that the board
Right.
would wanna elevate
Yeah.
to your attention. Right.
Yes, and for future CIPs, I think it's
future,
also a
yeah.
good discussion that we can have outside of the boundaries of the time limits of our CIP being done by the end of the month.
So I think we should make a note too, to figure out when to bring that conversation back. Maybe it's after the retreat, you know, June or July or something. So the only other new business item we had was to discuss a field trip. Well, we talked about a float trip. And despite all of our enthusiasm, we decided it was logistically too challenging. So we thought maybe a bike trip instead, a bike ride.
You're not allowed to pedal ahead of us.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so stop and wait.
There's a lot to go through the dangerous parts of.
Well, that's what we
cycling
talked about,
detour.
going through all the like missing connections.
We talk about
Yeah.
missing connections,
I don't maintain them, I'm trying to get our folks to maintain the detour right now.
I got tons of yellow signs still in my garage.
No, I'm not talking about the sign, I'm talking about the surfacing people riding.
Right, yeah, yeah.
Street sweeping and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a good way to
Where
see.
did we talk about going specifically? We had a conversation about like
Yes.
going around like Golden Ponds, right? Isn't
It's
that
so
where
funny
we went
'cause
to like?
we had a conversation, and Stephanie had a conversation when she just did on a bike trying being mixed up, because they started at Golden Ponds and did exactly the same thing we talked about. So they did Golden Ponds to Sandstone.
And I
think
got
we
lost
could
in
really.
the St. Bernardine too.
I used to look in the because I think we talked
That's
about
what we had that
incorporating
call once
some of
a-
that
once
more
a week,
southwest
Yeah.
area. And
Yeah, so the logos on it,
Yeah.
or something.
Or, yeah, possibly, Lagerman to Sandstone.
It's a longer ride, yeah.
There's no trail connection between the two
I know.
currently.
Good after
I
streets and
know.
cyclists.
That is the reason. I'm
Yeah,
obsessed
that's
with
right.
it.
Well, we can maybe consider. Maybe Scott, you would want to be a consultant
Yeah, that might.
on our bike tour.
Yeah, I mean, you try and do like a loop or you just try to do one way.
We probably
Well,
have
yeah,
to do a loop
yeah.
unless somebody can take our bikes back to the.
Well, we have that that little city busy thing that we rode back on.
That's not gonna take
It wouldn't
all the
take all
adults
our
in the room with the bikes.
Yeah.
Pilot.
So I think we
You
have to
probably
do a
won't- You
loop.
can't hook our trailer up to
Right.
our bus, probably. That's probably a nightmare.
Good luck with this. You can take that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think loop is probably a good idea. And again, I think, to your point of just going where we don't have trails or anything planned, I don't know how that helps a whole lot, but I think going to those places where we do have some challenges right now, and we have things in the future, we talk about how we make those priorities, and even up to your point, you know, that is on our goals we work with Boulder County on, is really trying to get up over to the AHI property, which leads down to Waterman, so that's on there, but it's a lot of, I wouldn't know how to get there from here.
Remember we
As
talked
far
about
as
too,
safe.
though, we can go look at
Well,
that
the,
Yeah,
dam at
that's true.
Golden Ponds.
You can
and
get
talk about
really
some
close.
of the
I do, I
natural
do. I do.
resource
That's one of my
issues.
two
That is
rides
up for a
I
reason.
actually do is
Which
do
one?
that ride. I ride
Do you?
to Lagerman.
Yeah.
Dry Creek comes down through, all the way up through here.
Yeah.
And connects all the way to the mall, Village of the Peak, sorry, through the underpass over here. What we need is a stronger connection between Hobby Lobby and Sam's Club and that sort of stuff up to Rogers Grove.
Yeah.
That's when it crosses.
Or to-
Yeah,
To
it
Sunset,
is
and we're working on that trail will be
Sunset.
built next year. Trail connection from Sam's Club over to Sunset, but Sunset's not the best riding experience. I'm hoping that as the county develops or redevelops the fairgrounds, we can have conversations with them about north-south pedestrian connectivity.
Yeah.
There, 'cause it's pretty segmented right now, it's not a good ride.
Well, you have
So
the
we could-
underpass.
Those are the good-
There's no way we're
Likely.
across, yeah.
We could do that with one crossing at Nelson as the only real big street crossing, I think you just said, right?
Right, yep. And then that would connect into the Safe Spring Greenway here, which you go to Golden Ponds and future to Pella and Lyons, or you can go right and go to St. Vrain State Park or Frederick, Firestone, wherever those trails lead east of there.
So you used to the at grade crossing down there, going over onto.
I like wend my way through. I do Pike, and then do that on Pike Underpass, and then I just wend my way throughout like neighborhoods and shopping centers to get over. And usually it's actually pretty I don't go on very much traffic.
Okay.
It's usually pretty good. I don't do main roads. I just kind of.
When we did Golden Ponds to Sandstone and then coming back Dry Creek to Kanemoto and then Bowen up and then connected to St. Vrain and back over to Golden Ponds.
Left-hand creek.
Left-hand creek.
Yeah.
I call it Dry Creek. Too many creeks.
So I think that people are generally
Yep.
okay with the idea of a bike field trip. You know, we could maybe work with staff
Okay.
to propose some different dates that we could consider and somewhere else.
Yep, and I think one thing that I heard you say, Steve, this is where I think that that idea of our lists that aren't quite complete or it comes off, it's like, I would hope to this, next to this board was like, yeah, that would be a nice hope and maybe something we push for that really does make that connectivity. It's not out there on a plan, but we know we need that north-south connection. How do we do something that's future oriented that is we're behind? Because we've seen it. It's a missing piece. It probably isn't in a planning place, is it?
No, it's not. It's conversations I've had with fairground managers over the years.
Even just knowing the county's thinking about redeveloping the fairgrounds is news to most people, and like,
It's
knowing
been
that's.
it's been in the paper. It's it's been out there.
Sure,
They did some surveys.
I think to
last
your point,
year.
it's like areas that are like known gaps and don't have a
Right.
plan yet, but just know that we're aware this is a gap.
Exactly.
Is equally valuable to things that are 5 years out in plans, I think.
Like, honestly,
Yeah.
I read the.
Okay, are we good? We ready to move on?
Is there a time frame for field trip, like roughly?
Yeah, do we?
We didn't
You
talk
want
about
do
a
you want
timeframe.
to do it at our next meeting, or do you want to just?
Yeah, let's talk
Okay.
about it.
And is that going to, like, is that like last time we included city council and stuff like that?
We can invite them, and we'll have to open it up to the public as well.
In terms of inclusivity, would it be nice to, like, maybe Lucky to Ride would be glad to provide bikes for people and because not everybody has a bike.
If somebody doesn't have a bike, just let me know. I have literally 400 bikes and trailers right now.
Oh, really, that's awesome. Because I was gonna say there are some nonprofits that do that too.
Yeah,
like
Best Line is the nonprofit in town.
Okay.
I mean, we're gearing up to give away 250 bikes or whatever, but there's a lot of adult and basically they're mostly geared for high school students, but they're adult sized bikes that people can ride. So, because then there's like a whole summer program, you give away bikes so that kids can go to summer school for that stuff.
Oh,
We
awesome.
can also designate like stopping points, so if people want to meet up with us but don't want to hike, they would know.
Like Golden Pond's doing for that,
Yeah.
good walking there.
Yeah, that's good, because that makes it accessible. I like it.
Great.
Okay. Our next agenda item is clarification on items from the packet. I'll get started. I noticed on the Parks and Rec, let's see, is it the Natural Resources, that there was the Montgomery Farm lease was potentially gonna be renewed, and I just wondered about, like, is there any chance that Montgomery Farm is gonna be reconsidered as the rec center location, and does it really make sense to renew that lease for 5
Yeah,
years?
so actually,
Or is it separate?
this pivot right here, and most of this farm is farmed by Dave Asbury, who's the largest organic farmer in the area. He continues to farm Montgomery Farm here. He knows that that is a potential future park. He feels it has still potential for him to do his farming until we make that decision. And then this lower portion, this is a trade because there's a Tice property here. It's going to be a community park across 66, which would lessen connectivity issues. The county and the city did a swap basically. So the city now has Montgomery Farm. The county has that, so Dave can continue farming up that area. And part of that was, as far as acreage, this lower portion, about 80 acres, will stay in agriculture. And Dave is be working on doing some sort of pivot down there with the conservation district to do part of the funding on that, soil conservation district. So he knows it's going to be a park. He's willing to farm it up until we tell him to get off, and he wants
So
to
you
keep
have
it.
like a contingency in
Yes.
the lease that
Yep.
you can get out of it for 5 years?
Yes.
Any other questions?
I wanted to point out that the packets have gotten bigger and more complete, and it's an amazing amount of info. Do you guys use this for any other thing else?
You know, one of the things is we've kind of talked about, we get councils and Herald and directors. This is a place we're hoping to be able to pull from a whole lot more. Because if people ask for information, I really there's so much stuff for staff to do already to give them additional work. This is one of the spots where we're really trying to say, is this the place we just send people to or even push information out? So, yes.
Because Ben and Jeff as well, I mean, the rec part of this, it's just a tremendous amount of info. It took me quite a while to get through this one. It's like, wow.
And as long as it's valuable information.
Yeah, it's a lot. But I was hoping that this wasn't all just for this meeting, like there was some other usage.
It really started that way. I don't know if there's any other piece, but I use it quite a bit now too, and it's really a go-to, and hopefully we can do a better job of getting that ability to, when councils or leadership.
Well, it makes sense as the manager, you can, hey, what are my people doing? That's pretty obvious. That's pretty good, yeah. Okay, that's all. So just curious.
So he emailed me that he wasn't gonna be able to be here and said that he would be happy to talk about the Union Reservoir pieces at the next meeting.
Oh, great, because there's that's a lot of info there.
Right, yeah. I mean, I think it probably really should just be an agenda.
I think so too, and again, that really is based on feedback from this group. So again, those pieces.
Well, and then he did a nice comparison with the polar res and all that put together was very good, accessible for me.
Maybe we can just put that as an agenda item.
Oh, it's a great comparison.
Yeah, no, that's it's a great comparison, yeah. I'm just saying the Boulder Reservoir. Union Reservoir is so much nicer than Boulder Reservoir. It brings people to our city, actually.
It does.
Does anybody know surface area wise, was one bigger than the other? Boulder Res versus Union? I have no idea.
I think Union's bigger, but Union's exclusionary zone makes it smaller.
Gotcha.
So it's my monthly question of on the Resilience and Green project. So we're looking at July for Reach 2.
Mm-hmm.
Any update on the bridge?
Yeah, council's still making some decisions, so moving money around. We should be with some direction we've been given. We should be awarding a contract in the next month. So construction starting out there probably around Memorial Day.
Okay,
so the best guess I have right now.
Okay, and so Reach 1 will be closed, will finish just before that kicks off, or is that supposed to? Because Reach 1 still hasn't been certified, right? It hasn't been closed up.
Yeah, it's not going to open. The trail's not.
No, not saying
but
the trail.
Yeah, no,
we're just wanting a project to be done before we start the next project. So, in my head, but
that project is 99% done. There's some spring stuff we've been waiting for good weather, and so I'm waiting for Alan to send an email for a site meeting.
Oh, okay.
But Alan will be the project manager for the bridge as well.
Okay.
And so there's that phase 1 of the Isaac Walton Reach is not holding up the bridge project, nor is it holding up the core. It's funding for both of those projects.
Right.
So the core is saying now that they're going to start in July also.
Okay. So it's still 24 months for Reach 2. That's what
the bridge is. The bridge is an 18 to 24 month project.
Yeah.
When we, there's an opportunity. There's possible opportunities to be able to get trail traffic through there before we've done some of the stuff up at the road surface area. But I don't have a schedule on that yet. We have to get with the contractor and figure out what their process is. Okay. So we can do that for another year, I'm sure.
Right. Okay. I just want to make sure it wasn't like.
Nope.
Maybe 3 years.
Believe me, if I had known that this bridge thing was going to sit, I could have opened that trail up last year and then everyone would have been happy and I just didn't know. Right. So, there you go.
Okay.
Yeah. I have one on the forestry update. There's tree planting in parks 2023, and there's a couple different parks listed there. I'm thinking about last month, one of the public who came and was asking about our tree planting efforts. And my question is really just, so this is helpful to know which parks we're planting trees at, but do we know if we're hitting our guidance? Are we behind? Are we ahead? Where are we in numbers wise on this?
I probably think it's more from Brett in that, but we really are at a maintenance piece right now too. That's really what we're trying to do, is trying to figure out where we are losing trees and making sure those trees put back in. Again, the thing we talked about before that is challenging is, when you put new trees in and having the appropriate irrigation and stuff and trying to get our tree canopy at a certain level. We're at about that level. We do have that issue of still equity within the city. Those it almost aligns. The heat islands and the equity piece almost overlap, but that's the piece where we don't have the ability as a city to line up. So the stuff we're really planting right now is typically going to be trying to replace and maintain those trees that we have lost either through disease, vandalism, or just old age.
What would it take to adjust the areas that need more trees to address the?
It would take working with private landowners is a real piece, because that's where those areas are at. The city doesn't have the ownership as far as the parks. The piece we really work with is trying to do I think it's challenging because we do our Arbor Day sales. It gives our residents, low cost trees to try to plant, but a lot of times it's still hard to get people that don't own their own property to have a landlord do that for them. Looked like you had some ideas.
No, I was just, thinking ahead because we seem to be growing exponentially every minute of the day. There's a new neighborhood added, it seems like. And for the future heat islands they're being created, do we need to talk to zoning, to planning? Just because when I look at something I presented to Planning Commission about, can we just have native plants? You're taking out native plants and then you're gonna replace it with, and could you just not take them out and just have what they, that kind of thing? And they're like, oh, do we talk to zoning about, how do we get that kind of information, that.
I think it's another group that really does. I don't have a good answer for that. I mean, we work with them. Our group, Steve and our DRC group, works together with planning when they do a new develop, and making sure that we're checking trees that were there that had value, that those get put back. So we do have a tree inventory, and we have a tree mitigation fund. So if they're taking trees out, they have to put trees back in. The tree list are trees that we think are, again, it's the hard part. We say native. Native trees here, are few and far between. So we're totally looking at trees that are resilient, is what we're trying to do.
Well, I was thinking more native plants, not herbaceous plants, not necessarily just the tree canopy. I was talking about the whole canopy because you have to have the whole thing.
Vendor story as well.
Vendor story.
And again, as you look at that, a lot of stuff as we go into these development, a lot of that is just going to be smooth brome or other species that were brought in here by agriculture. So a lot of it truly isn't native. It's hard within this urban footprint area that's been farmed and ag and channelized for so many years to have spots that really have natives. That's what we try doing, is going back from these fairly resilient. Smooth brome is very resilient. Sure. But it's just not a native species, and it's very monoculture, so it doesn't provide a lot of habitat or diversity for other, bird and insect species. So that's one of the things we're trying to work with them, is how we do a better job of being a more diverse habitat around those areas. They're pretty locked into, those are the standards we have, is X number of trees and shrubs per acre that go in. And again, we have a fairly good say in trying to make sure that plant variety is suitable to the area. Again, not native, but also provide some diversity in height and structure and other things. Steve, you can do it longer than I have.
Yeah, the land development code has criteria that developers need to meet. And I think a lot of the heat islands around this city are, if you looked at the development of those properties, they would have happened I'm making up in 1989 or whatever that is. And so as those properties redevelop, they'll have to meet the current requirements of the land development code. But that obviously takes decades to see that turnover. We natural resources do not look at any landscaping on private property. That's all done by our planning staff and or their consultants.
Okay, so that it's planning is that.
Right. Yeah, so
if we wanted to affect that, if we wanted to use, because I'm not sure on planning that they have the resource or the expertise like Paige would have on biodiversity and things like that.
The Planning and Zoning Commission is the ones who review amendments to the land development code, and then they are passed on to City Council for their adoption. Chapter 15.05 and 15.02 are the two sections of the code that deal with landscaping for private properties.
Okay, that's actually
pretty good, Steve.
Yeah. Any other items from the packet?
I had one question, which was, I mentioned we submitted our GoCo response with pass until next year. Was there any feedback on that?
Was it go?
Oh,
Bolton County.
It's a
Bolton
typo.
County. Oh, did they go?
It says
okay,
BOCO and it
yeah,
should
it's
say BOCO.
BOCO. Yeah.
Yeah, the Basin Trails
Yeah,
priorities
it-
topic.
The BOCO. So
Yeah.
we looked at that and we talked to Boulder County about taking forward the 1.2. So we're still in conversation with them, and I think we're good to go. We're good for a future pass.
It's maybe not fair because it was for Ben, but I noticed that they did a WSI class and sold out at 12. Are we gonna have enough guards this year? We're gonna get to open pools this summer, and I wonder, I mean, it looked, compared to last year when we couldn't find a single body to,
In talking with Ben, I think he's pretty confident he can get Kanemoto open in addition to the Sunset and the rec center.
okay.
And Roosevelt too, for confidence.
Roosevelt maybe, but it hasn't been started up for a lot of years, and that project is 25 years old, so he's just not sure about what hiccups he might run into when he starts turning the water back on.
Roosevelt is 25?
It was my first project, one of my first projects here.
Really? I can remember the old pools there. I can't.
I know, I remember when the baseball fields were there.
Yeah, all right, me too. I didn't-
So,
wow,
yeah.
I thought that was more recent than that. Shoot.
Yeah, sorry, we're aging at the same rate.
Yeah, right. Okay, and the other one is for you. There's Steve, you and Scott reminded me in the last month, in the minutes from last month, you mentioned 60 days to close on the property, hopefully, for Reach 12, west from Golden Ponds to Airport Road. Ownership, you said, hopefully in the next 60 days. 30 days later,
We're halfway there. No, actually, that's great. It's a good reminder that I need to send an email to Barb. We have given the developer all the information they need. We're waiting for a legal description. So we're dotting i's and crossing t's.
They
Gotcha.
have with us. It sounds like multiple members of that family that need to sign documents. So Steve was able to give them the appropriate documentation that they need to route them through all those members of the family.
And some are around, some are getting older in age and are harder to contact.
Okay.
Or live in Hawaii.
but it's still
Like that.
progressing,
Yes,
again, is the bottom
yes.
line. Interestingly, Google Maps thinks there's a trail there now
Oh, yeah.
to stay on the south side of the St. Vrain and
There is
walk out.
there's a road there now, an access road for me.
Yeah, well, there's also
It's
a big
private property,
no
too.
trespassing
Right.
private property sign.
Right. That will,
Okay,
the south side of the river will remain public free. It will just be used to maintain the creek, but we won't allow public down there.
well, so our trail will be on the north side.
Correct.
I don't think I realized that.
Along the tracks.
No.
No, along the river.
Along the river
Right.
from Golden Ponds.
Right through the ZWAC land, right?
Well, no, that's the
Well,
county.
Zweck is on the other side of
That's the county
Airport.
project. So if you can imagine where the pedestrian bridge that crosses the river right here, where the diversion structure is, on the north side of the creek, this area that's Cracker Pines now will become concrete. And then the concrete trail will become just south of these two ponds, underneath Airport Road, and then up the west side of Airport Road up to the south end of the Westview Middle School. There is currently a maintenance road on the south side of the river that the landowners have been using to
Right,
maintain
and
their
all that
property.
is shown on
This is
Google
all-
Maps as a
Yeah, this is
trail.
all, yeah, that's all gravel mining, that's all private property, and we'll use it to maintain the creek and to monitor the lakes down there, but it won't be open to the public.
Okay.
That won't change.
Interesting, because when you walk on that last lake of Golden Ponds, it says federal something or other, like you can't touch this or look at it cross-eyed. I mean, it's a funny sign.
I'm not sure I
Federal
remember the sign.
something,
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
When you walk north-south along that, there's a couple of signs. Federal something. Dang.
I know, well, there's all the gravel mining that happened on that property, there is augmentation and monitoring. That
Okay.
could be the monitoring that they're doing, I'm not
Whatever.
sure.
Yeah. It just sounds scary to me.
Stay out.
Thanks.
Thanks for the reminder, I'll email Barb tomorrow, I forgot about that.
Okay, we have about 5 minutes until 8:30. Do we want to extend? Are there any items from staff or from the board that are left to discuss?
I have two quick questions.
Okay, we probably have time for that.
Okay, so I guess I said, if we can get comms to update the RSVP section especially coming into yet another summer. There's a map from 2020 that says the entire project's gonna be done by 2022. Doesn't help you guys at all. That gets sent to me every week.
Sure.
So,
Do you mind sending a link to which one? Because we did just update our detour map to say 24 instead of 23.
okay.
But I'm not sure which link is in the links out there.
Yeah.
But I'll get with Colin.
Yeah, and it would, and then adding the Boston App Bridge and then Reach 1, Reach 2 updates would be great. So I'll send you the link for that. And then I had just a kind of question that Jeff kind of teased a month ago, that there were some projects that were kind of in the works that may affect recreation. And if that has become public yet, that he can talk about, or that we can talk about.
No, I can't, no. I don't have a whole lot more, but I don't think he probably did that one either, so.
Okay.
Asked him to.
If I could just, do it, I can do it pretty quickly, talk about Stephanie coming on. We also right now have 2 term project managers for this 8 and 5 that have been advertised, and we have a pretty good pool of applicants for both of those. One's a project manager 2, and one's a senior project manager to help get through this list of projects. And then with these 2 plus those 2, and then trying to manage all this, we do have a FTE full-time employee that's being advertised right there, a position being advertised for a manager for that group. So that's out there right now too. So probably getting close on both of those within the next 2 to 3 weeks for the 2 term positions, with the next month for the manager for that group. So that should really help us start moving some of these projects through.
Term position?
A term position is a fixed term, so they're benefited, they get everything to do, but their time is limited to basically the amount of the time the projects are there. So there's not a long-term commitment. So this is a 3-year term guaranteed, and then up to 5 years if the projects go that long.
Okay, thank you.
Where we're excited is that oftentimes positive performing term positions become full-time positions.
Right, sure.
Right, and that's
Hopefully,
it's a
benefit on
ground
both sides.
to having an enhanced workforce rather than just.
There's probably 3 ways that works well. I'm sorry, I was trying to go quick, but that you have people that are starting their career, and it's a way to build a resume and get your foot in the door, and you may do a great job here, but those get done, and there's fire stations and stuff to build in as well, or golf courses, so you can do it that way. People ending their career, they're like, you know what, I've been doing stuff that's been brick and concrete, I'd love to be able to do something the next 3 years, or really is outside doing that work, and then get like to use of that person that it just turns into a.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Okay. I think unless there's anything else, we're ready to adjourn if there's a motion.
I move that we adjourn.
In a second.
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Great. All right, thanks everyone.
Thank you.